The entity is an enigmatic creature, an ancient being incomprehensible to the human mind, and the ruler of Dead by Daylight's realm. Today I want to explore the entity, and describe it in the best way I possibly can. I want to explore its origins, its motivations, its realm, and just about all I can fit into this video as concisely as possible. Let's first explore what the entity is. This is a tough question to answer, and one with nothing definitive. At a basic level, the entity is an ancient being, likely as old as the universe itself. It's present in various forms, but mainly a fog, its spidery claws, its crows, and likely the red stain that projects out of killers. It runs the trials to feed on the emotion of those inside them, rewarding them in return. The closest we get to defining the entity further though is through the observer. The observer is a highly advanced being, likely human, who somehow ends up in the realm, trapped in a tower surrounded by fog. The observer studies the entity's species, which he names the Ancients, or the Old Ones. When describing them, the observer mentions that they would swim through the night sky of his homeworld, Terra Primus. This suggests the true form of the entity, and its species, I suppose, is the fog. The spidery claws we sometimes see appear in the trials, or even in some cutscenes, are likely just a physical extension created by the entity to represent itself beyond the fog. With the Ancients said to swim through the night sky of Terra Primus, this entry also suggests that these Ancients are capable of peace, with them coexisting with the observers on Terra Primus. This is a key thing to note about the entity. It's an outlier, at least the observer thinks so. When studying it, he is confused because how the Ancients acted back on Terra Primus is very different to how the entity acts. The entity is destructive and intentionally cruel, it seems. Between the observer's arrival to the tower in the realm and this peaceful coexistence with the Ancients, something happened, likely not something good. Unfortunately, when the observer arrives in the realm, he's quite confused and he doesn't know how he even came to be in the realm. The observer makes many mentions to the fact that his homeworld and a stated council of likely other observers were foolish when it came to the entity. They underestimated it, and they underestimated just how powerful and beyond their understanding it was. The observers appeared to be pretty in touch with the universe and understood that large cosmic beings existed, but nothing like the entity. The observers seem to have wanted to destroy the entity too, so when the observer is assigned to the entity and arrives within it, he is unsure the fate of his homeworld. And it's probably not good. We know what the entity does to those who seek to destroy it. Take the Imperiati for example, a group dedicated to taking down the entity. When it gets the chance, the entity attacks the Imperiati, killing them all and likely pulling them into its realm. Therefore, it not only is suggested that the entity destroyed the observer's homeworld and its inhabitants, but also quite possibly all of the other Ancients that lived alongside them. This leaves precisely nothing in the entity's way. It can do what it wants. So that's the origins. Let's discuss the makeup of the entity now. The way the entity works as a physical being is quite confusing. Ultimately, it's depicted as something that is more conscious than physical. Its realm in many ways appears to almost be a collective consciousness of all those inside it. That's what the observer thinks, at least. And that's sort of what the fog is too. The fog contains the memories of all those inside the entity's realm, and all those who have been inside it, which is how the observer extracts memories in the first place, using his Oris to look into the fog and recall the memories. This is also why certain things in the realm are the way they are. It's why the maps and realms are molded to survivor or killer memories, because that's how they remember them, and that's how the entity physically constructs them. The physical of the realm is all a product of the conscious, or more specifically a product of thought combined with emotion, which in the realm creates a physical thing. This is likely why the entity needs the trials, to allow it to grow and maintain the physical element of the realm. This is also why lore characters like Vigo are so important, because these characters have managed to master the realm. Where someone like the observer relies on the Oris to create, Vigo understands how the realm functions, and with this knowledge he's able to bend the realm to his will. This is how the hatch in the trials seems to have been created, by Vigo willing it into existence, forming the fog into a new object. The physical of the realm, after all, is built on material particles, primarily auric cells, which are described as the building blocks of the realm, and are likely just a combination expression of thought and emotion made physical, as the Observer suggests. The Observer also suggests that some people for this reason could be poisonous to the entity. People who are able to take control of the realm and bend it to their will are not something the entity wants. This is probably part of the reason for how it picks the characters for the trials, a case of both wanting a person loaded with many emotions, but also someone who isn't going to gain that further level of understanding about the realm. Someone who is ignorant, the Observer says, is likely what the entity needs and feeds on. The other thing that is poisonous to the entity seems to be the blight, a substance which comes around routinely in the realm and infects the entity, causing strange growths of plants with claws. To get rid of this, the entity needs to purge itself, flushing out all of the blight. The Observer witnesses something in the realm which he refers to as the entity possibly having some digestion problems. The fog suddenly begins to create life and then quickly takes it away in an instant. A confusing spectacle that leaves the Observer questioning what has happened. Possibly this was the purge. It's unlikely, however, that the serum could be used to destroy the entity. Destroying the entity at all, in fact, is probably not the best idea. It's never really directly referenced, but I've always found this particular entry by the Observer to sort of suggest what he views would happen in an indirect way if the entity were to be taken down. It would take everything down with it, potentially on a universal, omniversal scale. Therefore, it's better to simply enable it or run from it if you have the option. I could be reading a bit too far into that though. On the flip side, it seems there's some people who want to get into the realm. Talbot was originally one of these people. However, this also extends to the Black Veil too. The Black Veil are people who see the realm as salvation, and so worship it and attempt to enter it. This is primarily why they do so many terrible things and try to bait the entity out seemingly. It's the reason behind the Garden of Joy existing, the encouragement Otto Stamper gives the Doctor, and why a Descend Beyond movie is funded for Nicolas Cage. The Black Veil possibly originates from Adiris and her followers in ancient Babylon, with her hearing the entity's whispers and mysteriously disappearing soon after. In terms of the physical layout within the realm, it's all a little confusing. Most of the realm seems to just be fog. However, there is much more to the realm. The realm has lots of realms within it. All these realms are used by the entity to feed on emotion, and aside the trials we have and see in game, there are probably substantially more other trials happening elsewhere in the fog, possibly trials with different goals and structures, with the one we see maybe just being the most efficient. It's possible to travel between these realms too, it seems, with certain characters shown to traverse the fog and actually manage to reach other areas. We know Talbot, for example, traversed the fog before being sent to the trials. We also know that the realm is filled with life, much of it created entirely from the fog, which is a big thing. The entity can definitely create life, although the life it does create is often fairly shallow. It mimics, or on the flip side, very strange. In his tower, the Observer witnesses many strange occurrences, where he sees not only a range of structures out in the fog, but also creatures. There are spider-like creatures, squid-like creatures, beings named Unknowns, which are able to freely traverse the fog. These creatures may be similar in properties to Vigo. They are said to have secret knowledge and hide that knowledge within the realm. Possibly becoming so acclimated to the entity's realm results in you becoming some kind of strange squid creature that is able to freely traverse and create what is necessary. They are described as horrific creatures after all, but it seems what they're doing is positive in combating the entity, so it's also a little unclear. Whether these unknowns are the same as the unknown is probably not the case, but equally, maybe it could explain why the entity so aggressively attacked the unknown, with the unknown perhaps roaming the realm and stumbling out through a fracture one day. The other key place within the entity's realm is the Void. The Void is a dark and soulless place that contains all the survivors and killers who have been drained of their emotion. Not only them though, but also entire realms are down there. Entire worlds the entity has consumed and destroyed, and then tossed into this pit of despair after being done with them. Those who have traversed the Void describe it as horrific and worse than they could have imagined. It's a place of pure despair and emptiness. What we see in game and what we see of the entity is truly a tiny snippet of its realm. We have no idea direct numbers, of course, but the entity has more than likely destroyed and consumed hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of different worlds, consuming them, using them, and eventually tossing them to the Void. So, can you escape it? that? Well, the only way we know of to exit the void is with use of the blight. The blight possibly allowing someone to manipulate the entity in some form, or cause some indigestion maybe, I'm not too sure. It's mentioned that despite Talbot or the blight's journey to escape the void, it's quite possible the true escape from the realm is actually in the void. The observer finds in various stories about the realm that with use of certain markings, powers, music, and books, there is potential to open a doorway within the void somewhere that can lead to an escape. So where Talbot escaped the void but was then taken to another part of the realm, Vigo, who also escaped the void, could have possibly escaped the void by means of escaping the realm entirely. Another part of the entity we don't know much about is its heart. Apparently it has a heart. This is likely meaning more of a symbolic heart rather than a literal beating heart. The observer says he sees into the entity's heart one day, and it's something so confusing and bewildering that he feels burdened by it. What the heart actually is isn't too clear, but whatever the observer sees, it has quite extreme consequences on his mental state. So that's inside the realm. What about outside the realm? Well, the observer mentions that when the entity attacks a world, it plans out a perfect apocalypse. It taps into the collective fears of the world and targets that specifically. It has fun with the idea of destroying an entire world and its history. It extinguishes all empathy and compassion, and it slowly digs its claws into them. For the worlds it doesn't entirely destroy, it does usually still infiltrate in some form. Many worlds have these things called overlaps, known through the Omniverse by different names such as fractures, borrows, coils, and bleeds. These are places in worlds where the entity's realm crosses over with the Terra world, the most prominent and recent fracture we know of being Greenville, which had a direct entrance to the realm within its cinema. Other fractures are in the Garden of Joy, which is on an island in the Atlantic. Another is likely in Dire Island, the place where the realm opened up to Talbot Grimes, the Blight. Another is probably in the Flannan Isles in Scotland, where Yoichi is taken, as well as some lighthouse keepers. The fractures aren't just a crossing though, they're also seemingly capable of providing people with powers, particularly people who have been through quite extreme things. So potentially it's some sort of power coming from the realm, or the fog, some sort of entity power. One of these people is Haddie. Haddie and her brother Jordan are two characters who investigate these fractures. Haddie's and Jordan's existing across the Omniverse with many different names, many of which have managed to reveal some of the entity's deeds. This is also probably why the entity does target some of these characters, with the observer mentioning there are many Haddies and Jordans within the realm, probably in the void or locked away somewhere they cannot do it harm. The entity probably doesn't want people like this trying to expose it. This exposure to me seems like the true and real threat to the entity. It could very well be that the entity is pure evil. In some ways though, this would sort of undermine the nuance of the entity and be too simplistic an answer, because it's equally suggested that many of the terrible deeds the entity does, it maybe isn't doing consciously or intentionally, it's sort of just inherent to its existence. Not that that makes it any better. Even if the entity isn't pure evil, it's most definitely twisted and manipulative, and it knows how to torment people. Many stories of characters in the realm are ones that only really happened because of the entity. In some cases, the entity just watches, it seems, and awaits a character's fall. In other cases, it's much more active and directly messes with the person's life. In some cases, it completely changes a person's life course, and all to make them a perfect candidate for its realm and trials. The entity can do this too because it doesn't appear to be affected by time or space. It exists out of both of these things, and can enter into a world at any given time. This is why Adiris the Plague or Kazan the Oni say technically arrive in the realm after characters like Dwight and Claudette and Jake, despite being born hundreds or thousands of years before them. The entity and its realm are not affixed to any world in particular, nor any time. It's able to freely traverse the Omniverse and move between different time periods. It's not entirely clear how it does this, but we can consider it like this: the entity at the center, the many worlds and timelines surround it, and from here it is able to reach in any direction it pleases, including what we view as the present. It has a panoptical view of the Omniverse. This is why I think we can hardly consider it evil, because for a being this large, which requires emotion on such a high scale, any action that may seem significant to us is likely very beneath this ancient, endless being. circling back to the very start with the Ancients coexisting with the Observers on Terra Primus, and it's likely that it worked out that way because the Ancients fed on the Observer's people's emotions. The Observer recalls laughter, music, art, friendship, and family, all things that create positive emotion, which the Ancients likely fed on. Maybe the entity is just an Ancient which figured out that condensed fear and terror is far more valuable and powerful than anything positive, and so it wiped out all in its path to feed in the way it saw best. Or possibly it's a case of ease. It's easier to destroy and cause pain and death and destruction than it is to uplift a world, allowing it to flourish with art and happiness. Ultimately, we'll never really know. A key thing the Observer mentions is that the realm and the entity as a whole is very much a cycle or process within itself. He describes it as a snake which gorges on its own tail. The blood that is spilled in the realm is returned to the survivors and killers in the form of blood points. It's a cycle of offering and reward, a cycle of life and death.